People deluded, I'm back again.
Come on, Ian, man. Come on.
Because you always use that active red line defending. I think it's like.
People deluded, I'm back again.
Come on, Ian, man. Come on.
People
I'm with it.
deluded,
Oh
I'm
gosh,
back again.
technical difficulties. Wow. Sums up Monday morning, man. But as I was trying to say, people deluded. I'm back again. Was just about to hype Tom up, man. Special guest settings, people. It's Arsenal's transfer deadline day, kind of special. Obviously, I know it's ending tomorrow, but I needed to get a special guest, and I need to get someone that understands a lot about Arsenal and a lot about football. And again, we have a lot of different opinions, but I appreciate his viewpoints. Tom of the Gooner Talk TV, how you doing, my guy, man? Appreciate you being tuned in this morning.
No worries, man. No worries. Always a pleasure. You love that Ian Wright video. You just can't stop playing
Love it, man. Love it, man. Can't get bored of it, man. Uncle Ian and whatnot, broski. But how you doing, man? Listen, I know it's early in the morning. Before we get into the obvious, Moises Caicedo, I want to kind of, because I haven't spoken to you about the City game. What did you make of the City game? Obviously, we're out the FA Cup.
Yeah, I was there, and it was a weird one. It lacked intensity as a game. It didn't feel. I know the league game is going to be very different to that. It almost felt like a bit of a game that it was a case of who can lose this in a weird way, because it just didn't feel like a game where both teams are really pushing full tilt to try and win it themselves. And you know, I can compartmentalize that. You know, you look at the last time we went there, we got battered 5-0. It was a very, very different situation.
I'm with you with that.
Next to full strength, you know, and we've made 5-6 changes to the team and looked competitive, you know, against them, which is good. I was kind of unhappy with Holding starting. I would have liked to see Saliba start, I think, instead. And I think that would have given us more and maybe a better foundation to build off of in the first half. But Trossard really excited me from his performance. I was really happy with him. The only worry was Partey when he went off, but we found out recently that obviously that injury is not serious and he should be ready for Everton, which is fantastic news. But it probably put into perspective how panicky we can get if we lose him. So certainly something to think about.
I mean, you touched on a lot of vague points in relation to that City game. I actually wanted to kind of pluck your brains for. Obviously, you know, again, you mentioned Holding. Obviously, Partey came off. You mentioned Holding. We made 5 or 6 changes. What did you make of Rob Holding's performance? Because, again, I'm like you. I think everyone was thinking, oh, it's a big day for you against Haaland. And there were times he struggled. You know, I think Matt Turner did very well in goal behind him and things like that, sweeping up. And I think Gabriel did. But then when I look at it objectively, technically, it was 0-0 before he came off. Haaland in the grand scheme of things didn't do much. So it's like, were the changes kind of backed up with a half decent performance? Because on one hand, I don't quite agree that Arteta's thrown the game away, but it weren't our strongest side. Some would actually say that, you know, playing a week from now against Everton, there's enough time to rest players and things like that. Do you quite agree with the fact that some critics saying that he kind of threw the game away, maybe not taking the FA Cup as seriously as he could? Could he have afforded to name a strong team? Now, obviously, we're nowhere near City in terms of depth, but, you know, they had a lot of players out there, Kevin De Bruyne and Haaland, and we kept them quiet, really. I did enjoy the pressing off the ball as well, man, to be fair.
Yeah, well, I mean, the difference between Man City and Arsenal is that they can rotate for every game and still have a very, very competitive team, whereas we're, you know, still building the depth of our squad, still building up to that competitive level. So the question is, if you don't play those players, when are they going to play? And we're in a situation whereby we're going for a title and you need everyone singing from the same hymn sheet. You need everybody unified and motivated to push towards that goal. And if someone is injured, if a Saliba does go, if a Partey does go, if a Xhaka does go, and you're bringing in a player completely cold, you know, that in itself is a problem. So I get the argument and completely agree that we could have afforded to go strong again because of the timings of the games either side of this one. However, there is part of me that does understand the reason for rotation around this, because we have to make sure that if we do lose somebody, that we have players that aren't getting too many minutes to come in with that bit of practice, with that match minutes under their belt. I think Vieira certainly needed those minutes and is going to continue to need minutes. Holding those is the only one I've got a gripe with, because I always feel like Holding can come in. He doesn't necessarily need those minutes as much as everyone else does.
I agree.
We've just signed Kivior as well. You know, there's an argument you could have started Saliba and Kivior in this game to give him some ability to transition into this match. So he was the only real thing I had criticism regarding the lineup. But I completely understand people's frustrations. I don't agree with the idea that Arteta threw this. I just think he recognised that if you don't play them here, when on earth are you going to play some other players elsewhere further down the line? Because the Europa League goes into the rounds, which are knockout stages. I'd quite like to progress to that competition. I know the focus is very much like the Premier League, but Arsenal have got this European trophy, thing on them, on their back, where they need to get it moved off, and winning one's going to be important. So when are you going to play them? And I think we're going to go strong for the rest of the season. So I don't particularly mind, and I was still very happy with the performance.
So would you say, with that being said, indirectly or better yet, directly, Arteta's priorities, so far in the Europa League, he's named a strong team. Clearly, the Premier League is a priority. Not that we're trying to write off the FA Cup, but does that tell you where Arteta's thinking in that we could probably push for a league title and do what we can in the Europa League then?
Yeah, I do. However, I would say that his substitutions in the second half certainly led us to believe that he did want to progress in that, bringing on Zinchenko, bringing on Ødegaard, bringing on Martinelli, and there was an immediate impact when they came on. We looked a lot more threatening. So if he didn't, he would have brought on other players off the bench, or he would have let those other players go on for longer. So yeah, I don't think there's an argument to say he threw it or didn't value the competition, because the changes he made in the second half certainly led us to believe that he was going to try and get back into this game. So much so that if we'd have got an equaliser, it would have gone to a replay, which has been an additional game. So he clearly wanted to try and get something from the game, even if it meant taking it back to the Emirates. We weren't able to do that. We move on. I'm fine with that. I compartmentalise it. We've got bigger fish to fry.
I mean, I don't really feel right speaking about Kieran Tierney, but we have to be honest, man. I know you're a big fan of him like myself. Clearly, Zinchenko has come in, and a byproduct of Zinchenko doing what Arteta wants from a tactical point of view. He's just on another level in terms of what he offers to Kieran Tierney, and the byproduct is now Tierney's second choice. But he looked terrible, man. I can't even lie. He looked very terrible. There was one moment, you was at the game, so you might have been able to see it from a different perspective. He's half swiped at it with his right peg, and then it's kind of put us under problems. You kind of touched on it, but I kind of give him the luxury of he's not played too many times. It is a big ask to come and expect him to play well. But where are you at with Tierney? Do you think it's a thing where, I don't necessarily think we'll push Tierney out, but I think if a certain offer became available, certainly in the summer, Tierney and Arsenal have a decision to make potentially. And I say that in the sense of, I think we are getting depth, and every now and again, Arsenal fans are kind of scared of adding depth to the side. So I'd love to keep Tierney. You obviously got Tomiyasu, who's played left back against Liverpool and done well. So you could argue Tierney might even be a third choice left back at our club right now, man.
Yeah, I agree. And, with these links to Ivan Fresneda, I think it makes sense that Tomiyasu's maybe being seen as that other choice on the left side of defence, because Fresneda operates similar to Zinchenko. I don't think that will get done this window, but you can see the theory behind why we're going for a player like that.
The inverted fullbacks in that.
Exactly. And Tierney isn't that. He's tried to transition. They've tried to coach him into that role, and he has tried. He's definitely attempted to operate differently. I think we've seen him come more centrally. You've seen him operate spaces in between Gabriel and Saliba at times and gone slightly into midfield like Zinchenko does, but that isn't his style. He's a 40 to 50 million pound value Premier League level left back, that you're seeing sit on the bench. And when he comes in, he's not playing in the style that Arteta wants from that position. So, with all the respect in the world, he is what I would describe as a sellable asset that the club have, and could arguably make a very good fee for potentially in the summer. I think he would go off to a place like Newcastle, for instance. You look at their left back position and you think that is somewhere that they
could certainly invest for him, yeah.
Exactly. You could also look at Liverpool and say that Robertson's going towards the latter stage of his peak years. They might look to Kieran Tierney as potentially the replacement for him in the future. And it would be a shame to see him go off to clubs who we would perceive to be our future rivals for those top places in the league, as Newcastle try and progress and Liverpool try to get back to the top. But it is part and parcel of being a side that is competing at the top. You look at Man City and Jesus and Sterling and Zinchenko, and that move on to other top six teams. It's part of what happens. So whilst it's frustrating, it is probably going to happen, but we just need to make sure that we're very well covered in the areas that Arteta wants certain stylistic players to be useful in.
You're right, man. And then another guy who, I think we could both agree, Tierney, obviously the quality's there. Lokonga, I don't want to be harsh on him. I do think he's kind of becoming public enemy number one, and we're kind of bordering into that scapegoat sort of stuff. I don't think he was terrible against City, but it's another one where you kind of want him more. I'm sure you've seen the video where Ødegaard's shouting at him. I just don't know where it is with Lokonga, man. Like, what do you make of Lokonga? Because I've spoken about him at length. Like, I've got nothing more to really say until something else changes. What have you made of him? Because again, midfield is a massive area for us. Partey came off, like you said at the start. It kind of looked like we'd have a mountain to climb in that regards when he's not there, let alone when he is there, really.
Yeah. I like you think I'm coming to the end of Lokonga's chance at Arsenal. I feel sorry for him because I think
Amen.
he's unfortunately been a victim of injuries in wrong positions. He's not a six. I think we can all agree that his best position is playing slightly ahead. He had a fantastic pre-season. He was scoring goals.
This is the thing, man. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, he was playing in that slightly advanced midfield position where Xhaka is now, and I think he flourished. And when he's had to cover for Partey or El Neni, it's unfortunately exposed him a bit. He was also playing. I remember that game against Brighton at home last season where Xhaka played left back, and Lokonga had to play six without Xhaka in midfield, and he was utterly exposed in that game. He needs to go on loan for a season playing in his best role and come back. I wouldn't necessarily sell him because I think we can get a really good fee for him if he has a really good season somewhere.
I agree.
I think that's difficult to find that because Monaco are already offering 8 million euros, which is nothing. We paid more than double that to sign him. So
trying to rip us off.
Exactly. And clubs will do that. They'll look for opportunities to exploit. And I can't begrudge them of that necessarily. But I agree with you. I thought he did some good things in the City game. It's like if he came on and did what he did in the last 20 minutes of the game, you'd say, oh, he had a good cameo.
Yeah,
but because that whole
out to Saka in that.
Exactly. He looked really good combination. Under pressure, he improved as time went on as he built up his confidence. But that first 20 minutes, the losing of possession in the middle of the park to set off that City attack, he looked like his first touch was off. That's just symptomatic of a player with no confidence. It feels like he's got no belief from the manager at the moment, which he probably doesn't, But at this level, you need to show that you can come up against adversity. You can put in good performances despite the fact you're not playing too much and earn that place. Trossard, you look at him, he's come into a club where he knows Gabriel Martinelli is the starting option. He comes straight into the team and smashes that cameo. He did really well against home in the last game. We had against Man United. And then, of course, it looked really good. And then, of course, he's come in and started this game and looks like our most threatening player. So that's the bottom line. That's what you should do as a player if you're coming into the team when you know you're going to have a few opportunities. And it was kind of night and day between the two.
You kind of mentioned it, and I kind of have done Leandro Trossard a bit of a disservice. What did you make of his performance? Because as you said, against United, involved in the goal, encouraging cameo. I did kind of think before he got subbed, he kind of faded, but I think he is one of the positives, one of the players that aren't necessarily in our strongest team that, have laid down the marker to go with Matt Turner based on the City game. He did have a couple of good opportunities. And for me, I think he's experienced, he's adaptable, he's got a sense of urgency because let's just assume it takes 2 to 3 years for us, obviously, to get to where we want to as a club. That's great for the younger players. For him, he's, touching 30 and things like that. So there's a sense of urgency. He's a typical Arsenal player. And I think it was a smart reaction to, obviously, the failed pursuit of Mudryk. So where are you at with Leandro Trossard? And where was your thinking initially when we signed him off the back of, obviously, Mudryk not happening, even though it looked like at one point it would?
Yeah, I was gutted to not get Mudryk because I think he's a fantastic talent. And I think he showed again, similar to Trossard in his first appearance for his new club, that there is certainly a player that's going to come out and excite the league. So I hope he flops significantly, obviously.
Amen, man. Amen.
But I'm worried that he's not going to. But for Trossard, if Arsenal were going to pivot anywhere, bringing in someone who's 28 years of age, Premier League experience, can hit the ground running in this specific season, was the perfect pivot. Yes, there was the opportunity to sign him, so you can arguably say that Edu, despite I think it's a good move to pivot quickly, was aided by that opportunity being there. You've still got to take the opportunity to get him, and they've gone and done
over the line.
Exactly. There are teams. I mean, there are teams out there, I'm sure, that are looking for forwards, and Arsenal have gone in there quickly and got the deal done quickly. So that's really positive to see. And I look toward him as a player that, ironically, when you look at when we bought in Fabio Vieira for Ødegaard, maybe we should have looked to bring in somebody of the similar age profile to Trossard, because the problem with Vieira is he's not getting any minutes, and as a young player at that age, you need minutes. And Trossard doesn't necessarily need that because he's experienced. You know what you're going to get when you play him. He doesn't need minutes to build up, whereas Vieira does. And so I worry that maybe the investment in Vieira is going to face some problems, where the investment in Trossard won't necessarily face those same issues because he's a rounded player. He's refined. So I'm excited to see what he brings to the team between now and the rest of the season. He's not coming in to be a backup. He's coming in to take Martinelli's place, and fair play to him for it. We need that type of mentality.
like you said, man, he's coming to take spaces. Why I like the harmony, why I like the togetherness. We've got to remember there's a beautifulness about football, but also the harshness that either I'm playing or you're not. And I think Mikel Arteta shows that. And like you said, with Trossard hitting the ground running, it gives us another leg. It helps us with depth. If you was to look at it, Saka, until someone else comes in, his right wing is him under lock and key. Open season with a fit Smith Rowe, Martinelli, Trossard, whatever have you down that left hand side. So I'm all personally for it, and I'm with it. You know, with the Fabio Vieira thing, I don't know, man, because I think in relation to him and Lokonga, I do think not that I don't think Lokonga's a good player, but I can see the technical level from Vieira. It's just a case of, like you said, you need minutes, but you can't really get it because you're not in our strongest team. Physically, doesn't look like he's with it right now. And if I go back to the City game, bro, it looked like the beginning of the end, really, when you've got Fabio Vieira and Lokonga in the second half. They're not really fitting with it at the moment, so they're struggle. So if that was the case, where would you be with Fabio Vieira then? Because Trossard's another one who can play across the front four positions. As you said, minutes are currency. You've got Martin Odegaard, Xhaka and Partey are doing well. A fit Smith Rowe. Where did the minutes come from? Is it a case where you just continue to sit on the bench and whatnot? Because I do think if a couple of these players laid down markers, we might actually be looking at this January transfer window very differently, especially not the 23-year-old Lokonga.
Yeah, I think that the problem that Lokonga's had this season is whilst Arsenal have been winning games, they've not necessarily been blowing away too many teams. And that's meant that we haven't really been able to bring on players in the final moments of fixtures because we can't necessarily risk not having Ødegaard there. You know, we just beat Manchester United. You know, we needed you're 2-0 up against Spurs. You could bring him on away. We did bring Fabio on, I think, in like the 90th minute. But if Spurs get a goal, all of a sudden you haven't got Ødegaard on the field. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, Newcastle's 0-0. Brighton was close towards the end. You know, West Ham, we had to come from behind. Wolves were winning just by 2 goals. We beat Chelsea by just 1 goal.
A lot of emotional football.
Exactly. Southampton was close all the way to the end. We beat Leeds just 1-0. We beat Liverpool by 1 goal. We beat Spurs at home by 3-1.
A couple of games we've had to come from behind as well, man. You look at Fulham and you look at Villa as well. It's been emotional, really.
And had you look at Man City's games, and when you see them blow teams away, they're able to then bring off Foden when he's a young guy and give him minutes more often.
Whereas
we're not able to do that with Vieira. Exactly, 100%. And we're not able to do that with Vieira because we have to rely on Ødegaard to play the full 90 in case the game scenario changes rapidly and he's not on the field, and you've got a young guy in Vieira who's still developing and improving. Yes, we had the game against Brentford in which he was great, and that was fantastic, and that gave us encouragement. But he needs more minutes. And until Arsenal are in a place where they can give him that, maybe we should be looking at next season. Is he going to get enough minutes if we're in the Champions League? Are we going to be in a position where we are blowing away teams that you can bring him on for the last 20, 30 minutes of every single game in the season? Because that's what you want to get to, is a place where you can bring him on every game for at least 30 minutes to get him playing. But at the moment, we don't have that luxury because we need Ødegaard for the full 90. So it's a difficult one for him. Very difficult indeed.
Being devil's advocate now, obviously, in truth, nobody really knows if a signing will work out or not. But it just made me think, when you look at Lokonga, Tavares, Fabio Vieira, it's not really that one that you can really answer. But at what point do you say, do you know what, this isn't going to work? You know, for Lokonga, can we turn him into 27 million and just keep it moving? Or with Fabio Vieira, if it weren't to work, can we just get our money back? Like, at what point, in your opinion, do you look and say, okay, maybe we're going one way, these lot are going elsewhere, we have to probably close this door or loan you out and see what happens?
Yeah, I think 2 years into a 5-year contract is a good place to start making decisions about players. If in 2 years at a club of a 5-year deal, you've not made the necessary impact or you're struggling, I don't think a club can afford to just keep on ticking over. You know, you need to send them on loan for that 3rd year, probably. You know, if they're not getting into the team enough, see how they develop on loan. And then after that loan, you then make a decision. If they developed enough on that loan, playing regularly to convince you they're the right player to fulfill the last 2 years of their deal at the club or try to renew them, or have they done well enough but not well enough that you think they can get into the team, and then you make a decision to sell them? Well, the 3rd option is they obviously fail out on loan as well, and then you've definitely had your decision made for you. So I always feel like after 2 years, that's a good place to start making decisions about players. So Vieira's been here for a year. Let's see what we do next year with him. If by that end of the 2nd year he's been at the club, there's still question marks, I think we need to make a decision.
What have you made of the young loanees? Obviously, we saw Balogun back yesterday. Tavares has had a bit of a mixed period. Still, no one's able to tell me when he's been great defensively. It's all fun and games scoring goals. Pepe's out there and whatnot. What have you made of the boys out on loan?
Yeah, we'll start with Tavares. He's raised his value, and that's all we needed him to do. You know, he's raised because we've brought in Zinchenko. We've got Tierney still. We've got Tomiyasu. You've got a young kid called Lino Souza coming through. Who looks a real talent as well. Tavares' future, I think, lies away from Arsenal, but we signed him for £7 million, which is peanuts in this market. And I think we're going to be able to get a significant upgrade on that. I hope at least you think at least double, if not more, on that. I know people say we should be looking for 30 million for Tavares, but in reality, that's just not going to happen.
It'd be crazy to pay that for him, but I hope someone is.
Yeah, so do I. I hope that someone is as well. Who knows? With Newcastle this world, you never know what someone might pay. But if you can get 20 million for Tavares, I'm buzzing with that. I think if you look towards Patino, you've got to make way for this guy. You've got to give him the opportunity because he's special. We're talking Saka levels for me in terms of how he's impressed at that age coming through.
Scored the other day against Southampton as well, man.
Just about to say, scoring against Premier League sides, and that's what you need from the guy. He can play 6, he can play 8, and ironically, they're the 2 positions that we're really looking for depth in.
There's talk of recalling him, actually, man. You know better than me, but there's actually talk of that, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean, from my understanding, the club haven't ruled it out, so it's not like off the table this window.
Mick McCarthy, that's scary.
A day and a bit to go, so we'll see if that is something that they end up resorting to as a final resort. I tell you what, if we don't sign anyone and they've not recalled him, I will look at that a little bit, or not a little bit. I'll look at it critically because I think that it could have been an option, and we need to make sure we've given ourselves some depth at least. So yeah, Patino's still an option, I think, this window. Balogun, oh man, like if you're him and you've signed a brand new deal and you've seen Eddie Nketiah then given a brand new contract, you must be thinking, man, like this is tough, but he's done everything he can. If you ask me for a prediction of what happens, I think he's sold in the summer, is my prediction now. I think he goes to a club that starts him every week. I think you get a very good fee for him. And whilst I don't necessarily want to see him go elsewhere because I think he's got a future, no one can tell me that Eddie Nketiah doesn't deserve to be starting for Arsenal Football Club right now. He has answered the questions. And then you've invested 45 million in Gabriel Jesus, who's still excitedly got to come back as well. So, yeah, he'll want minutes. I think another loan doesn't necessarily suit him or Arsenal because you've got him at a really good moment. What if he goes on loan and doesn't do as well?
Shaky, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a decision to be made in the summer, and I think I lean more towards accepting a 30 to 40 million pounds offer, maybe even higher. Who knows who comes in? I see Temi in the chat box there saying Balogun is better than Nketiah. There's no evidence to me to suggest that's the case. He's doing really well in Liga with Reims and doing really, really well. But no one can tell me Nketiah is not doing fantastic. I think the only person with a higher expected XG per 90 is Haaland,
Yeah, you're doing all right. You're doing very well if he's the only one above you, man.
Exactly.
You're doing decent, man.
So I don't know what the evidence is to suggest that Balogun is better category, how you can say that with such chest that he's better than Nketiah, because the evidence isn't there to support that. Nketiah is unfavourable for whatever reason. I don't really get it because every time he's come in and started, he's delivered. What more can the kid do?
You know what it is, bro? He's just not everybody's cup of tea. And a lot of people in football, we love to be proven. A lot of people don't mind being proven wrong, but a lot of people like to be proven right. Clearly, as a striker, Eddie's been in and around since 18. He's now 22, 23. He's not really played. There's going to be a lot of trials and tribulations, and some people can't just accept being proved wrong. In relation to the Eddie and Balogun thing, for me, it's a great debate because this is what our academy should do. If we get better at selling players, who knows? Balogun might be better than Eddie, and Arteta might say, do you know what, Eddie, thank you, let's move you on, or vice versa of that. As long as guys can progress to our first team or people can be sold for decent profit, like you said, if you could get 30, 40 for Balogun in the summer, maybe that's the difference between the next Mudriks of this world or people that Arteta feels could take us to the next level, and they're kind of paying for itself. For me, with Balogun, I'd kind of hold fire, man. I'd be ready to move in every direction. I think, the one thing I wouldn't have done is what we're not doing is recalling him. I think maybe he could stay on loan in France or join a Premier League team. I think if there's certain offers, accept it. And also, I think probably what I wouldn't do is if Mikel Arteta wants to see him in August, see how good he really is, and maybe have him in and around with the first team. For me personally, regardless of how the season pans out, I kind of want this to now be an expectation versus an anomaly of the season. Obviously, we're going to be in the Champions League, so in theory, there's less opportunities. There's slightly less rotation to a certain standard. So that's probably where Balogun would fall up short. So I'd be ready to move to anything, but I think he's contracted until 2025? You'd imagine, especially the season he's had, within the next 12 to 18 months, you've got to probably be thinking about a renewal. As you said, again, if me and you as fans can kind of look at the situation, someone that's in it could probably see that maybe I need to move on if something dramatic doesn't happen. But like you said, Eddie Nketiah has done well. Don't get twisted. There's been many a times Eddie Nketiah could have converted more chances, but he's doing everything. He's physically improved. I think a lot of his goals have complemented his game really and truly, because he's played well without necessarily scoring, and it's nice to see him get a reward. Against City, he looked knackered. Like, he looked really knackered, as you would be. So I don't really get that one either, man. As long as Eddie can progress, if he keeps doing the business, long may it continue. I've left this question up here for a while. I know how I'd feel, so I'd ask you. Good morning, better yet, DG and Tom. Do you think losing Partey would be devastating for Arsenal's chances of success this season? Bit of a trick question, really.
I mean, yeah, it's an obvious answer, isn't it? Obviously, I think that he's probably the most integral part of this team. And if you were to say any player in this team, if we don't have them, what's the most damaging to Arsenal's title chances? It's Partey. I can't think of another player in the team. You know, people say Saka, but I think now we've got Trossard and Martinelli can play in wide areas. We just don't have someone to add that level of quality. And I don't think there's anyone you can sign even, and I know we'll talk about Caicedo, but I don't think even he, comes in and gives you what Partey gives you now. That tells you how good this guy is.
Time, yeah, crucial.
Exactly. So we need to sign someone to try and back him up and cover. Well, not just back him up, but try and add someone to compete. But it's tough. It's tough.
Where are you at with midfield? Because obviously Arteta and Edu in their playing days were midfielders. We knew in the summer we wanted one. We failed to really get one. We're kind of, I don't want to say scrambling, but we kind of are scrambling around to try and find the target. We're going after Caicedo as much as we want. Yes, you've now kind of full circle in the summer. El Nene's picked up a knock. We want to keep Xhaka and Partey in Cotton Wool. But we knew in January this was an area on top of out wide, primarily Mudryk links, that we needed to address. So where are you at with central midfield, or our pursuits of a central midfielder so far?
It should have been done in the summer. Is where I was at originally. And obviously we scrambled in the final days to get Douglas Luiz, and El Neni was going to be out until January. So they knew that they would have had a player coming back in January, and you would have had Douglas Luiz there as well. So it's not like the club haven't known either that we needed a midfielder. The tricky thing is obviously finding a player that we deem good enough to come in, and you can't deviate from that pathway, because you can't start signing players that you're not sure about.
Can't go against the grain, man.
Exactly. But there are players out there right now that are available and good. Caicedo might not be one of the ones that are available. But you look at Martin Zubimendi, who's been linked with a release clause. You look at
what do you make of him, man?
Zubimendi,
yeah, man.
Yeah, he's kind of like he is a six. He's the Busquets kind of player that Barca, I think, will be looking at to replace him. And you all know how good Busquets was. So if they're looking at him as his potential future replacement, you're looking at a hell of a player. So I need to do more watching him, and I haven't, because the links to him haven't been strong enough to suggest I need to at the moment. But the player I am looking at and have been watching is Ibrahim Abamba, who is young 20-year-old guy who's been called up already to the senior Italian side by Mancini to train with them. He's very highly rated. He can play as a six. He's been playing at centre back, but he's been playing at centre back as kind of a sweeper in the middle of a three. So he's been playing kind of the hybrid DM role, basically.
I would love that, man.
He loves a player who can play more than one position, doesn't he? So, but key thing is he loves to tackle. This guy goes in for challenges. He wins the ball back. He's got confidence to do that. That's the difference kind of in between him and Lokonga, is that he goes in and wins the ball. He had a man of the match performance against Benfica in the only game that Benfica at that point had dropped points so far that season. Wow. And Vittoria held them to a 0-0 draw, and he won man of the match in that game because he was excellent. So he is a player with a release clause of around 30 million euros. So you're looking at around 25 million pounds, which is high for, I think, considering his profile, but it's an investment
there, though, man.
There's a lot of upsides. And I think that if it comes down to the last day and Caicedo's not happening, I think you go in and activate the release clause of him and get him in the door. So let's see what happens.
And his agent, again, I can't remember actually, but I'm pretty sure his agent, I think he quashed the rumours, but he was in London, so maybe there's something. Do you have, before we get into Moises Caicedo, do you have faith in Arsenal finding an alternative? Because like you said, rightly or wrongly, as frustrating as it is, I do like how in the last 12, 18 months that we'll go after a player, but if certain things don't fall into place, we're prepared to walk away. We're kind of prepared not to have anything. I kind of do respect that with Arsenal, but at the same time, you do need to get things done and you do need to have alternatives. Now, it worked out with Trossard. Do you have faith in Arsenal being able to find something? this in what's left of the market.
I'm honestly 50-50, mate.
Join the club, man.
I'm real split. I really want to be optimistic, and I feel as though I represent the optimists out there more times than not. But I am 50-50 on it because I just don't see Brighton selling. And I'm not sure that Arsenal will move for an alternative because they're just so headstrong in the idea of only signing a player they're 100% convinced is good enough. And I do think that a player like Bambury is good enough to come to this team now. And it isn't, I think it's lazy to call him another Lukonga. I don't think he is that at all. And I think that, most Arsenal fans didn't have a clue Caicedo was a year ago. And yet we're clamoring for Arsenal to sign him. And, we can find these players.
Big money, man.
Absolutely. And we've always talked about trying to cut out the middleman. Why don't we sign Brighton's recruitment team and stuff like this, So
yeah.
Call Bamber another Lukonga is a bit critical if you're along the lines of saying that. So, yeah, look, I'm 50-50. What about you?
I got faith because just because of the sheer frustration with Arteta, he always says it in indirect ways. We have to maximize the window. Not that he's dropping Edu in anything, but he always says that's a question for Edu. I really would like to sign this. We have to move for this. Like even around, if he could, I think he brings in a striker excluding Trossard because he said the problem with Jesus is we've only got one. But as you know, Arteta's job is probably just to convince potential new players of the projects and signing for the club in dotting I's and crossing T's. That's Edu and Edu's team. And I do think everybody's quick to hit Edu over the head in what he does or doesn't do. I think he's shown an element where Fabio Vieira and Kyrgios are concerned that he can do things discreetly. And as you know better than me, because of what you do, the spanners get thrown in the works. Where I'm a bit scared is that we've indirectly showed our hand with Mudryk. He's played 40 odd times for Shakhtar, was ready to put the bag down. So if you're someone like Brighton with Caicedo or anyone else, you're going to naturally play hardball. So I'm not too sure. And rightly or wrongly, they might say, what, Partey's been fit longer than, we've ever probably could have hoped for. Xhaka's doing all right. In the summer, we kind of got over it. So maybe we can, but I don't like gambling like that. I feel, as you know, we're in a very unique situation where we don't know if we'll be here a year from now. Hopefully we are. So I would like to see something be done, for all the Bamba links, etc. I hope there's a long list of targets, really. In relation to Caicedo, apparently we've had a second bid rejected. Now, I don't know if these things are true, but we're now touching the 60s, the 70s sort of regions. Where are you at with that? Is it excessive? Is it just worth it? Should we do it? Is this the market now? Where's your thoughts at for the 21-year-old, man?
Yeah, I think there's three scenarios for me with Caicedo. The one regarding his price, the one is he's overpriced. In a normal market, you'd say he's not worth 70 million quid that we bid for him.
He's played 20 odd times in the league, 31 times for Brighton.
No, he's not worth that. However, if he wins you the league, it doesn't matter how much he costs, mate. So that's the second scenario. The third scenario is to Brighton, he's priceless because in the same reason that it doesn't matter what we pay for him if he wins us the league, for Brighton, it doesn't matter what you say no to if his contribution between now and the end of the season get them into European football.
For Europe, yeah.
So it works both ways. And I don't expect Brighton to sell him. I think they will remain very, very principled on this because they've already let Trossard go, who kicked up a fuss and then left. Caicedo's kicking up a fuss. If he leaves, it sets a bad precedent at the club as well. I think they can refocus him. I think they can offer him a new contract with a clause that says if, a title-winning side like Arsenal coming in the summer, you can go.
Or we'll just let you go in the summer, just help us do what we're doing now.
Exactly. I think that with Brighton, there's misconceptions about them as a club. People call them a selling club. They have a selling model. They don't. That is not their model. If you look back at their transfer history over the past decade, they have only sold players for significant fees in the last 2 to 3 summer windows because they've gone through a period of recruiting players very smartly. They've not wanted to let those players go, but it's been a case of like with Cucurella, they signed him for like 15 million. They've sold him for 55. They had it with Ben White. They've signed him for a small amount of money.
Premier League season sold for 50 million. Very good.
Exactly. But you go back before 2021, 2020, they're not doing that, and they're getting to a stage now where people are saying they're a selling club and that they have a selling model or they're a Salzburg or a Dortmund-esque in the Premier League type club. They don't want to be that. They want to be a club that progresses. They want to be a club that builds from its best ever finish in the Premier League that it got last season in 9th. They're now 6th in the table this season, pushing for European football. They're a club on the up. If you start selling your best players year on year, you're never going to achieve that. Exactly. Brighton want to be a club that players go to because they think they can get to European football. They don't want to necessarily be seen as a stepping stone, although that is what they're beginning to look like. They want to try and kick that before it gets beyond.
Before it sticks, really, yeah.
Exactly. So No, they're not a selling club. No, they don't have a selling model. Yes, they've sold players on for big profit, but they don't consider themselves that. And with Caicedo, they're trying to prove that to be the case.
Do you think we've left it too late with Caicedo? Because one does think, again, he's got new agents. If one does this in the first few weeks or days of January and he spend a long period kind of doing this, maybe it could work out. But like you said, he's priceless. The winner's Caicedo. He's going to get a move to Chelsea, Arsenal, United, or somewhere else, or a new deal, significant uptake in his wages. They're going to have a stronger period of obviously being able to sell him for a lot more money. Again, he'd have to get on with it because if the market closes on Tuesday, his move doesn't happen. It's within his best interest to not sulk and keep going. They probably have told McAllister the same thing. You're staying for now. In the summer, you can do with what you need to do. And with Matoma doing well every week, he'll probably be one that might be one to be moved on as well. So I'm with you. I'm a bit like you. I agree with everything you're saying, but I just feel, on one hand, rightly or wrongly, if it works out or not, we kind of have to get with it. If Arteta is mostly convinced on Caicedo of the player he could be tomorrow, let alone today, then what is it, man? Because if you, like with Van Dijk and Alisson, if you just put the money down, they do the job. No one cares. Obviously, this is the market now. If you've got potential as a young player, you know, we live in a day and age, any talented young Brazilian kid that plays well at 16, Real Madrid are coming in for him. So when he turns 18, he moves. So I'm all for it. If that's what we want to do, we have to get with it. Or you have to find these sort of players like Brighton before they get there. They signed him for 5 million. They're rejecting 65, 70 odd million. It pays to kind of be first. Or you have alternative targets. Now, I'm sure Arteta and Edu have spent all this month talking about central midfield or different options. So whether it's Caicedo, Zubimendi, agreeing something for Declan Rice in the summer, Bamba, any of these things, just get it done. But I just know when the window closes and we're struggling, we can't bring on, we tried to sign Caicedo. We either need to look to the bench and have someone. And with his new agents, I hope something can happen. It does seem like Roberto De Zerbi is kind of changing his stance in the aftermath of the Liverpool game. Again, games are being played. So I just don't know. I just hope we have another target, bro. I just hope that just able to move. Come this time tomorrow, you know, your channel, my channel, we're speaking about potentially moving stories and whatnot, bro. So I'm not too sure, man.
No, neither am I. If I was a betting man, I wouldn't be betting on Caicedo to move between now and the end of the window. I'm not optimistic about that. I'm more optimistic about us potentially getting somebody else. Because I just think that the club recognise how important it is that we do get somebody in, and that is going to be really, really key. Who that is, I couldn't tell you. It's impossible to know with this club. You know, they are doing things behind the scenes. They've proved that with Kivior. All I would say is we've not really mentioned Kivior. You know, he's played more games at DM in Serie A than he has at centre back. So
again,
it's an interesting
versatility, man.
Yeah, it's an interesting one that maybe, but to me, he's kind of the El Neni replacement if he's going to be that, and the Gabriel competitor. We know that we needed to bring someone in on top of El Neni, so just having Kivior there does not excuse not bringing in a midfielder. I don't know how high you go with Caicedo. You know, as I said before, if you win you the league, you're not going to talk about how much he costs. But are we really going to talk about going in for 90, 100 million quid for a player that's
crazy land then, man?
You know, I don't. It's difficult. Some people say you just pay it, you know, because he could win us the league. But what if he doesn't? You know,
he'll be the first to attack the player, man, because he's going to have a level of scrutiny. For me, for me, crucially, I think one thing I've loved is Arteta's talent ID. Clearly, we can see Caicedo's a good player, but it's not just what the player is today; it's the player of tomorrow. Obviously, when you start getting into these fees, there's not really resale value. But if you've got a 21-year-old that's played 30 odd times for his football club, 20 odd times in the league, there's a lot of uptake. If he does become this player that his current manager talks about, then it would pay for itself on top of just doing what he needs to do. So I'm all for it. But at what point do you walk away? If we have really bidded 65, 70, 75 million and they want 80, for example, then I personally believe, again, you might as well just give them the 5 million or just make something happen, because you've gone too far to turn back. What is 5 million in the grand scheme of things? We probably will flush out a lot of players in terms of resources. You know, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Pepe, Cedric Suarez. In the next, 2 windows, these kind of players will probably be flushed out. So between transfer wages and transfer fees and wages, it should be all right. Someone like Balogun, if you were to sell him for 30, 40 million, for example, it kind of indirectly pays for itself. But I think this is the territory we're getting into. If we want to buy these Premier League players, yeah, you can get a Trossard, you can get over the line with Benjamin White, but the Rafinhas at the time, the Pedro Neto at the time, the Caicedos, everyone knows everyone's got money in it, and Premier League teams know each other's got money. So do you pay the money or do you find the alternatives? As you said, I just wish we just take Brighton's scouting team, because we could avoid this whole story and sign him when he's in Ecuador, essentially, man. really.
Yeah, it's obviously the context is so different. Like Brighton can afford to bring in these players that are pretty unknown and use them. You know, we've just talked about Lokonga, Vieira. You know, we bring these guys in, they're not getting chances because they're not yet good enough to get those chances. So the context is different, and we're not in a league like, say, Borussia Dortmund can, where it's, you know, and I know they're not the second biggest team in Germany at the moment, but they still can play more experimentally. Salzburg are another good example that just batter the Austrian league every year. They can bring in a lot of the African talents that come in. They've got really good links with African players that, you know, because they can get work permits to play there.
There's a lot of things they can get around, yeah.
Yeah, and they can continue to play them. That's why you've seen so many African exports from Salzburg, like Mwepu and Sadio Mane and Naby Keita, because they can play there, you know. And I think that with us, whilst it's all well and good saying, yes, let's go and try and cut out the middleman, at the same time, you have to consider how you're going to get the
How you
minutes.
gonna go about that, yeah, man.
Yeah, how are you going to play them? How are you going to develop them? Because Caicedo's come in, he's gone on loan for 6 months, and then he's played. They've brought in Mitoma, he's gone on loan for a year, and now he's playing. So it's hard to you know, pick
Benjamin
up that model.
as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's tough for Arsenal, but they need to be able to find the right players. They need to have a list of options. It can't just be, they can't put all their eggs in one basket, because as we've seen, and they're not, to be fair, because they've missed out on targets and they've pivoted very well to alternatives. We just got to hope that they can do it in the next 48 hours and less.
I mean, this is quite a decent question, being devil's advocate. Considering our position, do we go in with 100 million? Is he more valuable than Mudryk in this moment? Now, two very different players. Mudryk is more, respectfully to Caicedo, more of a shirt seller, guys that will get your bum off the seat and, you know, doing skills and all those sort of things. Caicedo's essentially a piano pusher. His job is to really just work hard. Could you argue that, you know, Mudryk 18 months ago, who really knew him in the whole grand scheme of things? Caicedo's been around for a decent amount of time in the Premier League, even though they're at similar stages. So could you argue, if you've got 100 million for Mudryk, could you have a similar ballpark figure for Caicedo then?
It's just mad. Like, in my head, I'm just thinking, how on earth is Caicedo worth 100 million? Like, he's just not. But it's again, crazy. if you win you the league, you know, he wins you the league, then you're sitting there and going, I don't care. I don't care. He cost us 100 million. It's such a catch-22 in it. It's such a juxtaposition of where you're at in your mind between the two positions, because I don't know. I don't know is the answer. And that's fine. Sometimes I think us Arsenal fans, we're so intent on having to have an opinion that we can forget that we can just say, I don't know. And in this situation, should we bid 100 million for Caicedo? I don't know. It's the answer. And I don't even know if Brighton would even accept it. If they don't, I mean, I think they're already mad for rejecting 70, to be honest, in a way. But it's you know, he's worth more to them if they get European football. So it's tough.
I'm like you, man. I think they're a bit mad to reject it, but then I'm looking from an Arsenal perspective. As you said expertly, you know, he's worth keeping. They want to keep their squad together. They've lost Trossard. You lose Caicedo. You've lost two key players, dampening your European chances, despite, you know, doing well at the weekend without them and doing well in general. And they probably know Caicedo will get whether they get more or less money. They know they'll get a move in the summer or whatever, and it's still a massive profit from 5 million quid, really. And obviously, with, as you said, you know, the Basumas, the Cucurellas, the Benjamin Whites, with these kind of guys going and whatever they'll make for Caicedo, their cash resources are not necessarily bleak right now. So it's like they could afford to kind of do these things and hold on to players. We live in a day and age, rightly or wrongly, Leicester have played hardball over Yuri Telemans, you know, whether they wanted money necessarily or not, whether it shot them in the foot. So I'm with you. I don't necessarily think we should spend 100 million, but I don't know. I feel if it gets to around, if, for example, we're bidding 75, 80, as much as I would like a shiny new toy at the club, and I do like Caicedo and, you know, have aroused my imagination of what he could bring, I think we need to move away from that. If we spend it, great. If Arteta with his talent ID and Edu say this is the man, then it's not my money, not to have 100 million, but cool, we'll do what we need to do, really. But yeah, I think we should move away. I mean, my personal bias is when it comes to spending that little bit more, I'd rather do that on the attacking players, guys that are more likely to win you games and things in their own sort of way. But if we wanted to do that, fair enough. And it could be decent in the long term to have Caicedo and Declan Rice. What have you made of the Declan Rice links in the summer? Now, whether it happens is another thing, but that's right up my street, if I'm completely honest with you, man. I'm all for Declan Rice arriving at the Emirates, man.
Yeah, me too. Look, I think it shows ambition. I think it's an ambitious move, and Arsenal feel confident that they can get this one done. And Declan Rice is open to it. The elephant in the room is Chelsea, and he's got these links to Chelsea, having played there and having a lot of good friends there. And he's always very much been linked with Chelsea. But with their chase of Enzo Fernandez, you're like, surely you're not going to be looking to get both of them.
Yeah.
In. It's mad to think that they might be spending over 200 odd million in January on
8-year deals and whatnot as well.
It's mental, but
crazy.
Yeah. In short, Declan Rice would be a great acquisition for Arsenal this summer. It's not something we can do in January. I think he wants to stay and help them stay up this season before then moving in the summer. And he knows that he will get a big move in the summer, so that's not a problem to him. It's a move that I think Man City make, and I think that's the type of thing we should be aspiring to do if we're looking to try and compete for the title every season.
What do you make of Milinkovic-Savic?
I never ever know what on earth it takes to get him out of Lazio because no one ever seems to be able
even
to do
a real person, man, at this point.
Look, he's a very good player. I see reports from Italy, which I always say to people, take with a grain of salt unless it's
Amen.
Because they're just mad with the things they report
taking around the houses.
They do, I think there was a report earlier in the window saying that he's available for like 10 plus 40 in the summer, which you just look at and you go, well, if that's true, everyone would be doing it, surely.
Yeah, he wouldn't be at Lazio before the papers even finished the article. He'd be at a new club, really.
Exactly. So he's a great player. If you can get him out of Lazio, I think he offers exactly what Xhaka does and arguably more in that left-sided 8 role. But he's not a 6. He's not going to be the guy that comes in and does what Partey does. I think he can play deeper and has done, but I don't think that's his best role. So yeah, if you said that we can sign him for 50 million, I'll probably do it, because I think we need a quality body in midfield, and he is that. So but again, it's strange, isn't it, how nobody is going for him.
He's just being left there, man. My last question for you, Tom. Obviously, it's over. Well, it's just under a week now. We've got Everton on the weekend. They've got Sean Dyche. They're fighting for their lives. It's away from home. Where's your, not that there's, we got to get through the transfer window and things, but where's your viewpoints and thinking now that we've got to get back into Premier League mode?
Well, I think the club just kept ticking over. The transfers happen in the background, and the players are very much focused on what they need to do. Trossard and Kivior have come in. They've assimilated very seamlessly into things, as I understand it. The Kivior doesn't really speak much English at the moment, but he's going to be learning very quickly. Trossard, of course, can just come straight in, as we've seen already against Man City, and do the business. So against Everton, I think we'll perform well. They're obviously going through a shake-up. I think Dyche will look to try and just be really stubborn, try and break up Arsenal and frustrate.
I'm not looking forward to it, man.
No, I'm not looking forward to the 10-hour round drive up and back, to be honest, either. But it is what it is. An early kick off on a Saturday. But I think it's still one that we should be able to comfortably, get a result in. And if we are serious about the title, it's a game that we absolutely must be expecting to win. And I'm looking to see what the likes of Trossard brings into the team again, and going back to full strength, of course, for that game.
Saying that, it's kind of gone over my head. What do you make of Onana links then, the Everton lad? Because we wanted him when he was at Lille. He's kind of been linked with like Caicedo and Zubimendi kind of in the back burners and things. Do you think that's an avenue to explore?
Yeah, I do. Apparently he wants to kind of stay at Everton and help them stay up. But again, if you're Arsenal and you're Onana and you're looking at Arsenal coming in, say, a £40 million bid, and you've got a chance to win a title playing there this season, you'd have to question, would he really not turn down that opportunity? So I think he is a viable option in an alternative to Caicedo. And if they don't get him, it makes sense they go for him, because, as you say, they liked him when he was at Lille. That was very much true. West Ham were another team interested in him, Chelsea as well. And obviously they've apparently already been rejected by him, although I don't know how real that is. They are everywhere looking. But yeah, he's a viable option as an alternative, I think, for sure.
Hey, I'm with you with that, man. Love for the super chat. I don't want to air you. Shout out to Gooner Swag 10. Appreciate the super chat. At this point in the window, given we're ahead of schedule of a title challenge, how much is it to secure a real shot at the title this year? I'm going to leave that to you because I don't have a clue. I would say sign some super players, man, and just hope that no one gets injured and we keep doing what we're doing, man.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of money can you put on securing a title? It's a priceless amount of money. So, it's whatever it costs to get in the player that changes things for you in midfield, I think. So if that's 40 million for Onana, then it's 40 million. If it's 100 million for Caicedo, then it's 100 million, So it depends very much on the player that you bring in that transforms things for you this season. So it's yeah, you can't really put a number on it without knowing who the player is. But I think we all know that if we don't sign a midfielder, our chances of winning the title aren't over, but they are certainly very, very, they're on the edge of an injury to Partey. They're a Partey injury away potentially from falling apart.
This is it. And also the dynamics of our team change, because Partey getting injured is one thing. At least with El Nene, you know, respectfully to him, he's not Thomas Partey, but he can come in and plug a gap. Yes, we've got Kirill who can play defensive mid, as you expertly put, but we just don't know what he can bring in an Arsenal shirt. We don't know about adaptation. So we probably have to tweak the system, whether that's moving Zinchenko into midfield, whether that's, you know, the Smith Rowes, the Odegaards, the Fabio Vieiras of this world. We're kind of doubling down with 2 rotating 8s. Ironically, like what we tried to do against Brighton at home last year, which kind of didn't work. I don't know, but we are literally at the halfway point of the Premier League season. We've got the Europa League. It would be a bitter pill to swallow if we kind of did what we did last Jan, in that, you know, kind of let ourselves down in the market, really. So I hope we could do one better, man. But yeah, Tom, man, I've had you for 50 minutes. I don't want to take up any more of your time. Appreciative for you being tuned in and everyone listening. What content have you got to come today, this week, etc., if you haven't released any vids already? Because I know you're an early bird.
Obviously, I've been doing these shows at 8 a.m. every single day, covering the transfer window, and there won't be one tomorrow morning because I'm working deadline day. I got a 6 a.m. shift to start, which is going to be fantastic. But I tell you what, I'd rather do that than the midnight shift for deadline.
Yeah. You're right.
So yeah, there'll be a show tomorrow afternoon. I'm back and forth about doing a video today on like 20 odd midfielders that we could still sign, just because I did one on 30 forwards.
People, make him do it, man.
Yeah. We'll see. I did 30, and then we signed the first one on my list in Trossard. So you know,
you definitely need to get that out, man. You're a good omen, then, mate.
Yeah, maybe I need to. Anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Always.
Mine, Tom, man. Appreciative. Again, make sure you're subscribing to the Gooner Talk and things like that. Make sure you're following Tom on his social medias and all of those sort of things. And hopefully the next time either of us release a video, then we've signed some players. I'm back again at 11:30. But for now, people, one love. We're out, man. Enjoy what's left of your days, man.
Because you always use that active red flag, defending.
I think it's like